On the road in New Mexico visits Hillsboro, New Mexico. When you pass through Truth or Consequences, New Mexico, you don't find much truth, but you find plenty of consequences. This old town was, in its time, a wild frontier town, and it puts on no airs after being renamed after the 1950s television show. Further south on I-25, on the road in New Mexico, takes the exit to Hillsboro, another frontier town that has a population of 125 living souls and a ghostly history. Hillsboro's fame is linked to a couple of famous mines, the Opportunity and Ready Pay mines. The only mining around here now is done by gold amateurs prospecting arroyos, careful not to get shot for claim jumping, and a big open-pit mining project, the Copper Flats Project, that has been bitterly and unsuccessfully fought by modern townspeople. Highway 152 runs through Hillsboro and takes you all the way to Silver City. It's one of the most scenic drives in New Mexico. Today, On the Road in New Mexico starts its explorations of Hillsboro with a local guide who grew up here and knows the town like the palm of his hand. Parking along Highway 152, John points out a little tunnel by the side of the road, recently marked by a huge Trump flag in a town that leans liberal. John tells us that this area is Wilder's Gulch, and an old miner named Bill used to live in this tunnel right under where the flag is flying. One night he was smoking and he went to sleep, and there was a fire, and he died from asphyxiation. The town closed up the tunnel so no one else could live there again. By the side of the road we talk with a gold hunter, come up from Texas, who tells us about his heart attacks and salvaging silver from old computers. We take a look at a funny little imprint on the rocks by the side of the road that our guide has been trying to figure out. The country around us reaches away for miles, and John tells us about old times when miners that couldn't get along were dumped down mine shafts and never seen again. In the town's early days, all the businesses were open. People worked or starved, and living off the land was the way of life. John takes us to a canyon past the other end of town, where Highway 152 goes over Percha Creek. He tells us about a big flood in 1972 that took out buildings and changed the town's landscape, and how the town tried to change the flow of the river, but to no avail. We spot new graffiti on the bridge over the creek, and it doesn't speak well of our current times. Looking over the edge of the old road by the bridge, John reminds us that the road used to follow the little arroyo around the base of the cliffs, and kids used to swim in the creek here. After our initiation to the town history, On the Road in New Mexico takes its own unescorted stroll down Main Street. The little town doesn't have a mall, a strip mall, a school, or a city hall. It's an unincorporated slice of history that is the last slice on the plate. Most people and places have a life cycle, and unless Hillsboro reinvents itself, it isn't going to support the life that is here. Most who live here now have pensions, have government jobs, or operate a ranch. Tourism is scanty, and the town is barely a dot on the New Mexico state map. Our first stop is at highway markers at the east end of town by a little park, where bicycle riders suit up for a popular ride along Highway 152. These historical markers are found all across the state and predate Google and the Internet. Hillsboro, we learn, was prominent in the 1800s, with mining, ranching, and farming the mainstays. All the buildings along the road through town were open and operating, and the town was the Sierra County seat before that distinction went to Truth or Consequences. One of the leading citizens in town who was her own marker was Sadie Orchard, who at one time ran the local bordello. Further down the street, we come to vacant buildings for sale, and the United States Post Office built in a time when people wrote letters and paid their bills by check or ran a credit tab at the local stores. It only takes 15 minutes to walk the entire length of town. We come to Our Lady of Guadalupe Catholic Church that has a little handwritten note saying the priest wasn't making Mass today because he had car trouble. Across the street from the church is the only cafe in town, the General Store. It's open 3 days a week, Friday through Sunday, and is a historical landmark, at one time being the Miller Pharmacy. The food is good, and inside, closed now because of COVID, there are relics of the past that take you back to earlier times. Walking through the rest of the town, we visit the jail that has been torn down, walk down long, narrow streets, and pass old vintage houses that haven't changed much since they were built. A few people are moving in, but the town's glory days are far behind it. There used to be an apple festival and art show that drew people, and a biker bar that drew lots of old men on Harleys. It seems now that the people here like their anonymity and don't want things looking too nice, because that will bring people with ideas of change. Wrapping up our tour of the town, we cross Percha Creek and look for a guide. Tonight there will be a fire under the stars and a UFO watch. We wonder if the aliens' passports are in order, and doubt they would stay here long. Still, just in case, we have milk and cookies ready, and a beer if they prefer that. Hillsboro, it seems, can use a few more visitors. To the uninformed tourist, this place could seem right out of the Twilight Zone.